The brass nameplate gleams under the gallery's pristine track lighting. Meridian Dreams, 2019. Oil on Canvas by Cassandra Vale. My fingers trace the engraved letters, each one a small betrayal carved in metal and mounted on stark white wall. Below the plate, my painting hangs in the place of honor. 6 feet of azure and gold that took me 8 months to complete. Now credited to a woman who's never held a brush for longer than it takes to apply nail polish. I remember every stroke that went into this piece. The way the morning light hit my studio window at exactly 9:47 a.m. when I discovered the perfect shade of cerulean for the sky. The 3 weeks I spent layering translucent glazes to achieve that particular luminous quality in the water. The moment of breakthrough when I realized the composition needed that single bird in flight to balance the weight of the horizon line. Cassandra wasn't even in the country when I painted those birds. Tonight's opening reception at the Whitmore Contemporary Gallery represents the culmination of 18 months of careful planning on her part and 3 months of even more careful planning on mine. The invitation list reads like a who's who of the city's cultural elite: museum directors whose acquisitions shape public taste, private collectors whose purchases can make an artist's career, art critics whose reviews have the power to elevate or destroy reputations. Everyone who matters in this rarefied world is here to witness Cassandra Vale's debut solo exhibition, Stolen Light: Meditations on Memory and Loss. The irony of that title would be amusing if it weren't so personally devastating. 3 months ago, I died. Not literally, though discovering that your former best friend had systematically stolen your entire artistic portfolio and was preparing to launch a career built on your work felt remarkably similar to suffocation. I found out in the worst possible way. Walking into what I thought was a casual coffee meeting to discuss our upcoming shared studio rental, only to discover Cassandra showing my paintings to Helena Whitmore, the gallery owner, claiming them as her own creations. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Cassandra and I had been inseparable since our second year at the Meridian Institute of Fine Arts, sharing everything from studio space to technical secrets to late-night conversations about the crushing uncertainty of trying to make it as painters in a world that seemed designed to break artistic spirits. I'd trusted her with my techniques, my inspiration sources, even my family's complex history with my career choice. She'd documented everything, photographed my process, asked detailed questions about my methods, and apparently spent 2 years planning to claim it all as her own. But that was then. That was the timeline where I trusted blindly, where I assumed friendship meant loyalty, where I believed that artistic integrity was a shared value rather than a naive vulnerability. This time, I brought my provenance documentation. This time, I've spent 3 months assembling an arsenal of evidence that would satisfy a forensic investigation. This time, I'm not just here to reclaim my work, I'm here to take everything. The gallery's main floor buzzes with the particular energy of an art opening, a carefully choreographed social performance where conversations are conducted in thoughtfully modulated tones. Champagne flutes serve as props for sophisticated gestures, and everyone positions themselves to be seen by precisely the right observers. The space itself is a masterpiece of calculated ambiance: white walls that make colors pop, track lighting positioned to eliminate shadows, polished concrete floors that echo just enough to add gravity to footsteps and conversations. Helena Whitmore commands attention near the centerpiece wall, where 3 of my largest paintings hang beneath Cassandra's name, like captured flags in an enemy's headquarters. At 58, Helena has spent 3 decades building Whitmore Contemporary into one of the most influential galleries in the region. Her eye for talent is legendary among artists and collectors alike. Her business acumen is unquestioned in an industry where financial survival requires constant adaptation, and her loyalty to artists who prove themselves commercially viable is absolutely unwavering. Which makes tonight's revelation particularly delicious. Helena's personal story adds weight to her professional authority. She started as an art history graduate student with more passion than capital, working nights at a coffee shop to pay for a tiny gallery space in what was then a marginal neighborhood. 30 years later, that neighborhood is the city's premier arts district, and Helena owns the building that houses 3 floors of exhibition space, 2 artist studios, and her private office suite on the 4th floor. She's discovered talent that now hangs in major museums, negotiated sales that set auction records, and built relationships with collectors whose patronage can sustain entire artistic movements. I've studied Helena's trajectory carefully over the past 3 months, not just because she's been unknowingly exhibiting my stolen work, but because she represents exactly the kind of strategic partnership I've been envisioning for years. Helena has the reputation, the collector network, and the institutional relationships. What she doesn't have is succession planning for an enterprise she's built entirely around her personal vision and contacts. What she's about to discover is that she also doesn't have adequate fraud protection. Sophie Chen. The voice belongs to Marcus Thornfield, art critic for the Metropolitan Arts Review and 3 other regional publications. His opinions carry enough weight to launch careers or end them, and his presence at tonight's opening signals that Cassandra's supposed debut has attracted serious attention from people whose judgment shapes market values. Marcus is in his early 40s, with the kind of sharp intelligence that makes artists simultaneously crave and fear his attention. Marcus, I reply, accepting the champagne flute he offers from a passing server. Didn't expect to see you here. This seems a bit emerging artist for your usual coverage. Helena specifically requested I attend, he says, his pale blue eyes studying my face with the concentrated attention of someone who senses undercurrents worth exploring. She said Cassandra's work represents a significant new voice in contemporary painting, that it deserves serious critical attention. Helena has excellent judgment, I agree carefully. Cassandra's work is quite familiar to me. Marcus's eyebrows rise slightly. Familiar how? Do you two move in similar artistic circles? We share certain influences. Common artistic ancestry, you might say. I take a deliberate sip of champagne, savoring both the vintage and the moment of anticipation. In fact, I'm planning to discuss some historical connections between her pieces and earlier works later this evening. Context is so important in understanding an artist's development, don't you think? Indeed it is. Marcus studies me with the sharp attention of someone whose professional instincts are telling him a story is developing. I'd be very interested in that conversation. Perhaps we could arrange a more formal interview? I'm always fascinated by the interconnectedness of artistic movements, particularly when they involve contemporary practitioners. I think that can definitely be arranged, I say, allowing my smile to carry just enough mystery to keep him interested. Though you might want to wait until after tonight's presentation. I suspect the context will be much clearer then, and you'll have a much more complete story to tell your readers. Before Marcus can probe deeper into what I mean by presentation, I excuse myself and drift toward the back wall where some of my smaller pieces hang. Each one represents months of work, layers of technique developed through years of experimentation, artistic choices that reflect my personal aesthetic philosophy, developed over a decade of serious practice. I recognize my own brushstrokes the way a mother recognizes her child's laugh. Intimate, unmistakable, impossible to fake convincingly. The way I build color through translucent layers, the specific manner in which I handle edges between forms, even the rhythm of my brush pressure create patterns as distinctive as fingerprints. Waterfront Nocturne hangs directly in front of me, a piece I completed last spring during a residency at the Coastal Arts Center. I remember the exact moment of inspiration, standing on the dock at 2:30 a.m., watching moonlight fracture on the water's surface while fishing boats returned with their catches. I spent 6 weeks capturing that quality of light, that particular mood of solitude and anticipation. The nameplate reads, Cassandra Vale, 2019. Sophie! Cassandra's voice cuts through my reverie as she appears at my elbow, resplendent in a black cocktail dress that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent. Her auburn hair has been professionally styled into an elegant chignon, and her makeup has been applied with the kind of precision that requires either significant skill or professional assistance. She looks every inch the successful artist she's pretending to be. Cassandra, I reply warmly, turning to face her with a smile that's completely genuine in its anticipation of what's coming. Congratulations! This is quite an impressive showing. Helena has really outdone herself with the presentation. Thank you. Her smile carries a hint of uncertainty, as if she's not entirely sure whether I'm being sincere or setting up something more complicated. I wasn't completely sure you'd come tonight. I know seeing other people's success can be difficult when you're still building your own career. Other people's success, the phrase hangs in the air between us like incense, heavy and suffocating and loaded with assumptions about my place in the artistic hierarchy. I wouldn't call it difficult, I say carefully, my tone remaining friendly while my words carry just enough edge to suggest complexity. Educational, perhaps. There's always something to learn from observing how different artists approach similar themes and subject matter. Cassandra's laugh is bright and hollow, the kind of sound that's performed rather than felt. Always the generous spirit. That's what I've always admired about you, Sophie. You see the best in everyone, even when they probably don't deserve such consideration. Generosity is important in building artistic community. I agree, noting how her fingers fidget with her champagne glass stem. Though I've learned to be more selective about where I direct it. Some people appreciate generosity while others see it as an opportunity to take advantage. A flicker of something, guilt, fear, calculation, crosses Cassandra's face before she recovers her composure. Well, I hope you enjoy the exhibition. The pieces Helena selected really do represent my best work from the past few years, and count your best work. I let the phrase settle between us while I study her face, noting the micro-expressions that reveal her discomfort with this conversation. Over Cassandra's shoulder, I spot Noah Carrington making his way through the crowd, navigating conversations with the practiced ease of someone who's spent years in these social settings. My former fiancé looks polished and confident in his tailored charcoal suit, playing the role of supportive boyfriend to perfection. At 34, Noah has the kind of classical good looks that age well, and the conversational skills that make him welcome at parties where business relationships are built through social interaction. What Cassandra doesn't know is that Noah's interest in her has less to do with romance and more to do with the fact that he believes she's a rising star in the art world, valuable for both social status and investment potential. Noah comes from old money that's been carefully preserved through smart investments and strategic positioning. And he's always been drawn to emerging artists whose work might appreciate significantly in value. What Noah doesn't know is that I've been documenting his financial transactions for the past 6 weeks, including his recent purchase of 3 pieces from tonight's exhibition. Pieces he bought believing they were authentic Cassandra Vale originals, pieces he plans to hold for 2 years before reselling them once her reputation is established and market demand drives up prices. The irony is going to be exquisite. Noah, I say as he joins us, my voice carrying genuine warmth that's entirely focused on the entertainment value of this moment. How lovely to see you again. Are you enjoying the exhibition? Absolutely, he replies, his smile practiced and charming and completely empty of genuine warmth. Cassandra's talent is remarkable. I can see why Helena was so excited to represent her work. The sophistication of these pieces is really extraordinary. Helena does have excellent taste, I agree, noting how his hand settles possessively on Cassandra's waist. She's built her reputation on recognizing authentic artistic vision when she sees it. The word authentic lands with surgical precision. Cassandra's smile tightens almost imperceptibly, and Noah's eyes narrow slightly as he tries to parse whether there's subtext in my comment that he should be concerned about. The market response has been very encouraging, Noah continues, apparently deciding to interpret my comment as straightforward praise. Several serious collectors have already expressed interest in acquiring pieces. The investment potential seems quite strong. Investment potential. It's exactly the kind of language that reveals his fundamental approach to art as commodity rather than creative expression. Investment is always tricky with emerging artists, I observe, watching his face carefully. So much depends on factors beyond just artistic merit. Provenance, authenticity, the sustainability of an artist's creative output over time. Well, Cassandra says, her voice carrying a note of forced brightness, I should probably mingle with some of the other guests. Helena wanted me to spend time with a few collectors who flew in specifically for tonight. Sophie, it was lovely seeing you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. She drifts away with Noah trailing behind her like a well-dressed shadow, and I watch them go while noting how Cassandra's posture has shifted from confident to defensive, how Noah's hand hovers protectively near her elbow, as if he's preparing to guide her away from potential problems. They're beginning to sense that something isn't quite right with tonight's script. My phone buzzes with a text message from Dr. Elizabeth Crawford, Professor Emerita of Art History at the university where I completed my MFA. The message contains a single word: ready. I finish my champagne and make my way toward the gallery's rear corridor, where Helena maintains a private office suite. The space serves multiple functions: storage for pieces not currently on display, a meeting room for serious collectors and potential acquisitions, and Helena's personal workspace where she handles the business side of gallery operations. Tonight, it's going to serve as a war room. Dr. Crawford is waiting for me in the hallway outside Helena's office, along with two other figures I've carefully assembled for this evening's performance. The first is Dr. James Rodriguez, a forensic art authenticator whose scientific analysis of paint samples, canvas composition, and brushstroke patterns has been accepted as evidence in federal court cases involving art fraud. His laboratory downtown is equipped with spectrographic analysis equipment, high-resolution digital microscopes, and other tools that can determine not just when a painting was created, but often where and by whom. The second is Patricia Ming, a former insurance investigator who spent 15 years tracking stolen artworks and establishing chains of ownership for claims involving millions of dollars in art-related fraud. She now works as an independent consultant, helping galleries, auction houses, and private collectors verify the authenticity and provenance of works they're considering acquiring. Sophie, Dr. Crawford greets me with the warm authority of someone who's spent 40 years nurturing talent and recognizing authentic artistic vision. At 73, she's small and silver-haired, but her intellectual presence fills rooms. She taught me more about the business side of art careers than anyone else, and her network of former students now includes museum directors, gallery owners, and successful artists throughout the region. Everything is in place, she continues, gesturing toward Helena's office. The documentation you provided is comprehensive, doesn't begin to cover it. I have never seen such thorough process documentation from a working artist. I've had time to be very thorough, I reply, settling into one of Helena's leather chairs while Dr. Rodriguez opens his laptop and Patricia arranges folders of documents on the conference table. 3 months of very focused research and preparation. James turns his laptop screen toward me, revealing a detailed forensic report complete with photographic evidence and scientific data. The spectrographic analysis confirmed what we suspected based on your preliminary documentation. The paint samples you provided from your studio match the chemical signatures of the works currently on display with statistical certainty. We're talking about matches at the molecular level. He clicks through several screens showing comparative data. The titanium white formulation is particularly distinctive. It's from a batch manufactured in early 2018 that was distributed to only 12 art supply stores in a 3-state region. We cross-referenced purchase records and found that you bought significant quantities of this specific formulation, while there's no record of Miss Vale purchasing any. More interesting, Patricia adds, sliding a thick folder across the table, is the timeline evidence. The photographs you took during your creative process, time-stamped and backed up to cloud storage with integrity verification, provide irrefutable proof of when these works were created and by whom. I open the folder to find printouts of hundreds of photographs documenting my artistic process over the past 3 years. Work-in-progress shots showing paintings in various stages of completion, close-ups of specific techniques and color choices, even images of my hands holding brushes as I applied particular details. Every photograph includes metadata showing not just the time and date it was taken, but also GPS coordinates confirming the location. Every single image has been verified through blockchain timestamping, Patricia continues. The digital signatures prove that none of these files have been altered since they were originally created. This level of documentation would satisfy any court in the country. The most damning evidence from an artistic standpoint, Dr. Crawford observes, is the compositional analysis. Each of these paintings demonstrates techniques and artistic choices that are entirely consistent with your previous body of work. The way you handle light sources, your color palette preferences, even your brush pressure patterns, they're like fingerprints, Sophie. Impossible to replicate convincingly without years of practice. I nod, feeling a deep satisfaction at the thoroughness of our preparation. And Miss Vale's artistic background? Minimal, Patricia replies with professional detachment. 2 years of community college art classes, no formal training beyond basic technique workshops. Her previous work, the few pieces we could locate, shows none of the sophistication evident in tonight's exhibition. It's the artistic equivalent of someone claiming to have written a symphony when their previous musical experience consists of playing chopsticks on a piano. Devastating, James agrees. But we need to be strategic about how we present this evidence. Helena Whitmore has staked her professional reputation on this exhibition. She won't appreciate being made to look foolish, even if she's been victimized by sophisticated fraud. This is the delicate part of tonight's operation. Helena isn't complicit in Cassandra's theft. She's another victim who's been manipulated by carefully constructed lies. But she's also a potential casualty of tonight's revelation if we handle this badly. My goal isn't to destroy her gallery or damage her reputation, but to position myself as the solution to her problem. Which brings us to the succession plan, I say, pulling out my own folder containing business documents I've spent weeks preparing. Helena has been looking for a partner, someone with both artistic credentials and business acumen to help her expand the gallery's reach into new markets. What if tonight's crisis became tomorrow's opportunity? Dr. Crawford smiles with the particular satisfaction of a mentor watching a former student execute a perfectly planned campaign. You've thought this through very carefully, haven't you? I've had excellent teachers, I reply, gesturing toward her and the documents spread across the table. And excellent motivation. We spend the next 25 minutes reviewing our timeline and ensuring everyone understands their role in tonight's revelation. The plan is surgical in its precision. Expose the fraud in a way that protects Helena's reputation by positioning her as a victim rather than a fool, demonstrate my professionalism and business acumen, and offer myself as both the wronged artist and the business partner who can help the gallery recover from this crisis while expanding into new opportunities. James will handle the scientific evidence, presenting forensic analysis in terms that establish credibility without overwhelming the audience with technical details. Patricia will focus on the timeline and documentation, showing how systematic the theft was while emphasizing my professional approach to protecting my work. Dr. Crawford will provide academic authority and context, framing tonight's revelation as an educational opportunity about authentication and due diligence. And I'll handle the business proposition that transforms crisis into competitive advantage. When we're finished reviewing the plan, I return to the main gallery floor. The reception has reached its peak energy, with clusters of guests engaged in animated discussions about artistic vision, market trends, and the eternal question of what constitutes authentic creative expression in an increasingly digital world. The irony is almost too perfect. Helena stands near the central display, speaking with Robert Sterling, a collector whose interest in acquiring one of the larger pieces is evident from his body language and the way he keeps glancing between the painting and the price list. Robert is in his 60s, made his fortune in tech development, and has been building a contemporary art collection for the past decade. His purchases often signal broader market trends, and his endorsement can significantly impact an artist's career trajectory. I position myself within earshot, noting how Helena's passion for the work shines through her professional demeanor as she discusses technical aspects and artistic development with someone who clearly appreciates both aesthetic and investment value. The use of light in these pieces is extraordinary, she's saying, gesturing toward Meridian Dreams with obvious enthusiasm. There's a sophistication to the color relationships that suggests years of technical development and artistic maturation. This isn't the work of someone who just picked up a brush yesterday. Indeed, Robert agrees, his voice carrying the authority of someone who spent considerable time and money learning to evaluate artistic quality. The technical execution is impressive, but it's the emotional depth that really distinguishes these pieces. There's a complexity of vision that you don't often see in emerging artists. The Provenance documentation is solid, Robert continues, demonstrating the kind of due diligence that serious collectors have learned to practice in a market where fraud is an increasingly expensive problem. Absolutely, Helena replies without hesitation. Miss Vale has provided complete records of her artistic development, including photographs of works in progress, documentation of her materials and techniques, even video recordings of her working process. Everything has been thoroughly verified. I feel a momentary pang of sympathy for Helena. She's not lying, she's simply repeating information that Cassandra provided, information that appeared credible on the surface. Helena's crime is trusting an artist who seemed professional and well-documented, not recognizing that the documentation itself was stolen, along with the artwork. My phone buzzes again. This time the message is from Marcus Thornfield. Ready when you are, this should be interesting. It's time. I make my way to the small raised platform at the far end of the gallery where Helena typically delivers opening remarks and featured artists give brief talks about their work and artistic philosophy. The space is equipped with a wireless microphone system and a retractable projection screen for presentations, designed to accommodate everything from informal artist talks to formal lectures by visiting critics and curators. Ladies and gentlemen, I say, my voice carrying clearly through the gallery's acoustically optimized space, as conversations gradually taper off and faces turn toward me. If I could have your attention for a few moments, I have some information to share that I think will interest everyone here tonight. The transition from social chatter to focused attention takes about 30 seconds, the kind of natural pause that occurs when people sense something significant is about to unfold. I see Helena looking puzzled but not yet alarmed, Cassandra frozen near the back wall with a champagne flute halfway to her lips, Noah scanning the room as if looking for escape routes. My name is Sophie Chen, and I'm an artist, I continue once the room has settled into complete silence. Some of you may know my work from group exhibitions and smaller shows over the past few years. Tonight, I want to talk about artistic authenticity, the importance of provenance in establishing both aesthetic and market value, and what happens when trust is betrayed within our artistic community. The silence in the room is now absolute. Even the catering staff has stopped moving, apparently sensing that something significant is about to unfold. 3 months ago, I made a discovery that fundamentally changed my understanding of friendship, artistic integrity, and the mechanisms by which creative work gets attributed to its creators. I pause, letting the tension build while I study the faces in front of me. I discovered that paintings I had created over the past 3 years were being presented to galleries and collectors under someone else's name. A murmur runs through the crowd, the sound of people beginning to understand that they're witnessing something more dramatic than a typical artist's talk. Helena's face has gone pale, and Cassandra looks like she's considering making a run for the exit. The paintings currently on display in this gallery, I continue, my voice steady and clear, represent approximately 18 months of my artistic work. They were photographed, documented, and in some cases physically removed from my studio without my knowledge or consent. Dr. Crawford appears beside the projection screen, laptop in hand, and an expression of professional gravitas that commands immediate attention. With your permission, Helena, I'd like to present some evidence that will clarify tonight's situation for everyone present. Helena nods mutely, apparently too shocked to speak, or perhaps beginning to understand the scope of what's about to be revealed. The first image that appears on the screen is a photograph of me in my studio, brush in hand, working on the central piece of tonight's exhibition. The timestamp clearly shows the date as March 15th, 2019, and the painting is only about 30% complete. My face is clearly visible, as are the distinctive features of my studio space. The north-facing windows, the particular arrangement of easels and supply tables, even the coffee mug I always use during morning painting sessions. This photograph was taken during the early stages of creating Meridian Dreams, Dr. Crawford explains in the kind of authoritative tone that 30 years of university lecturing develops. Note the distinctive compositional choices already evident in the work, as well as the particular painting techniques being employed. The next slide shows the same painting in a more advanced stage, followed by another showing its completion. Each image is time-stamped, geotagged, and shows clear evidence of my artistic process. The progression is obvious and compelling. Anyone looking at these images can see the natural development of the work over time. For comparison, Dr. Crawford continues, here is the earliest documentation Miss Vale provided to the gallery regarding this same work. The screen displays a photograph of the completed painting in what appears to be a different studio space. The timestamp shows a date 6 months after my own completion photos. And notably, Cassandra herself doesn't appear in the image, just the finished painting against a neutral background. The implications are immediately obvious to everyone in the room, and the energy shifts palpably as people begin to understand what they're witnessing. James Rodriguez steps forward with his own laptop, his manner carrying the weight of scientific authority. The technical analysis is equally conclusive, he says, bringing up a complex display of data that fills the projection screen. Paint sample analysis, canvas composition studies, and digital enhancement of brushstroke patterns all confirm that the works on display tonight were created by Miss Chen, not Miss Vale. The projection screen fills with scientific data that's probably incomprehensible to most of the audience, but carries the unmistakable weight of forensic evidence. Spectrographic analyses showing molecular level paint composition, microscopic images of canvas weave patterns, digital maps of brush pressure and stroke direction, evidence that would satisfy any court in the country. From a forensic perspective, James continues, these paintings show consistent technical signatures that match samples from Miss Chen's studio. The probability that someone else could have created work with identical material and technical characteristics is essentially zero. Patricia Ming takes over the presentation, her manner carrying the professional authority of someone who's spent years tracking art fraud for insurance companies and law enforcement agencies. From an investigative standpoint, the pattern of theft is clear and systematic. Miss Vale had access to Miss Chen's studio through their friendship, had opportunity to photograph works in progress and document techniques, and had motive. She was facing financial pressure and saw an opportunity to launch a career based on stolen work. She brings up a timeline graphic that shows the relationship between my documented creative process and Cassandra's subsequent claims of authorship. The visual evidence is damning. Every piece Cassandra has claimed shows up in my documentation months before she provided any evidence of creating it herself. Helena finally finds her voice, though it comes out smaller and more uncertain than her usual commanding presence. I don't understand. Cassandra provided complete documentation, references from other artists, photographs of her working process, even video recordings. Process videos that were edited to remove Miss Chen from the frame. Patricia replies gently but firmly. We have the original files which show both artists working in the same studio space. Miss Vale simply cropped out everything that would reveal the actual creator of the work. The room erupts in whispered conversations as people begin processing the full scope of what they're witnessing. I can see art world social dynamics shifting in real time as attendees calculate the implications for their own transactions, relationships, and reputations. Cassandra's reputation is being destroyed in front of 50 of the most influential people in the regional art world, but more importantly, questions are being raised about authentication processes, due diligence, and the mechanisms galleries use to verify artistic credentials. Cassandra herself has gone completely white. She sets down her champagne glass with a trembling hand and starts moving toward the exit. But Marcus Thornfield intercepts her path with the smooth efficiency of someone who's spent years interviewing people who'd rather not be interviewed. Miss Vale, he says, his voice carrying the authority of someone whose next article will be read by every serious collector in the region. Would you care to respond to these allegations? Our readers would be very interested in your perspective on tonight's revelations. This is all a misunderstanding, Cassandra stammers, her carefully maintained composure cracking under the pressure of public scrutiny. Sophie and I collaborated on some pieces. We shared techniques and ideas. She's obviously confused about the attribution. Confused? I step down from the platform and walk toward her, my movement creating a clear line of sight for everyone in the room while maintaining the kind of calm professionalism that contrasts sharply with her obvious distress. Cassandra, we both know that's not true. You photographed my work systematically, stole my artistic processes, and built a completely fictional narrative about your artistic development. I pull out my phone and open a video file that I've been saving for exactly this moment. Since you mentioned collaboration, perhaps you'd like to explain this. The phone speaker fills the quiet gallery with audio from a conversation Cassandra and I had 6 months ago in my studio. Her voice is clear and unmistakable. I wish I could paint like this, Sophie. You make it look so effortless, but I feel like I'll never develop my own artistic voice. I've been trying for years, but everything I create looks amateur compared to your work. My voice responds with the kind of gentle encouragement I'd offered dozens of times. Everyone finds their voice eventually. You just need to keep working at it. Maybe try some different subject matter or experiment with techniques that feel more natural to you. Cassandra's voice again, with a note of desperation that I hadn't recognized at the time. What if I don't? What if I'm just not talented enough? Maybe I should find a different way to be part of the art world. Something that doesn't require me to actually be creative. The recording ends and the silence that follows is deafening. A different way, I repeat quietly, letting the words settle over the room like dust after an explosion. Apparently, you found one. Helena's expression has shifted from shock to cold fury, the kind of controlled anger that comes from realizing you've been made complicit in fraud that threatens everything you've spent decades building. Miss Vale, I think you need to leave, immediately. Helena, please! Cassandra tries desperately, her voice taking on a pleading quality that's painful to witness. You don't understand the full situation. Sophie is trying to sabotage my career because she's jealous of my success. She's always been competitive with me, and now she's using fabricated evidence to destroy my reputation. Jealous? Helena's voice could cut glass. Miss Vale, you've made me complicit in art fraud. You've put my gallery's reputation at risk, endangered my relationships with collectors who trust my judgment, and potentially exposed me to legal liability that could destroy everything I've built over 30 years. The only thing I'm jealous of right now is galleries that apparently do better due diligence than I do. Noah appears beside Cassandra, his face pale but determined, apparently deciding that his investment in her career requires him to make some kind of supportive gesture. There has to be some explanation for this, some misunderstanding about the creative process or the timeline. The only misunderstanding, I interrupt, producing a folder from my purse and handing it to Helena, is your assumption that you could profit from stolen work without consequences. Helena opens the folder to find copies of financial records showing Noah's recent purchases from tonight's exhibition. These document Mr. Carrington's acquisition of 3 pieces from tonight's show, totaling $47,000, purchased with the stated intention of holding them for 2 years before reselling once Cassandra's reputation was established and market demand drove up prices. Helena's fury now has a second target, and her voice carries the kind of controlled rage that comes from discovering multiple layers of deception. Mr. Carrington, are you telling me you attended this opening not as a supporter of the arts, but as a speculator looking to flip my artist's work for profit? Noah's mouth opens and closes soundlessly. There's no good answer to Helena's question, and everyone in the room knows it. The art world has complicated relationships with commercial interests, but attending an opening specifically to identify investment opportunities while posing as a romantic partner crosses lines that even the most commercially minded collectors typically respect. Furthermore, I continue, enjoying the mathematical precision of this destruction. Mr. Carrington's financial records show he's been advising Cassandra on pricing strategies, marketing approaches, and long-term career planning. This wasn't a romance, it was a business partnership built on stolen goods. The crowd around us has shifted from observers to active participants, their whispered conversations creating a background hum of judgment and speculation. I can see phones being discreetly activated as people begin texting, tweeting, and otherwise spreading word of tonight's revelations through the social networks that determine reputations and opportunities in the art world. By tomorrow morning, everyone in the region's artistic community will know what happened here. Marcus Thornfield steps forward again, his journalistic instincts clearly engaged and his notebook already open. Miss Chen, what outcome are you seeking here? Legal action against Miss Vale? Financial compensation for the stolen work? Criminal charges for art fraud? Justice, I reply simply, letting the word carry weight. And the opportunity to set things right. I turn to Helena, who's still holding the folder of evidence with hands that shake slightly from either anger or shock, or the kind of adrenaline that comes from watching your professional world suddenly shift on its axis. Helena, I know this evening has been devastating for you professionally. You've been victimized by a sophisticated fraud, and your gallery's reputation has been damaged through no fault of your own. I pause, letting her process this characterization, while noting how the crowd around us has grown larger, as other conversations have stopped entirely. But I think tonight also represents an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Her voice is cautious but interested, revealing the kind of strategic thinking that's kept her gallery successful through 3 decades of market changes and industry upheavals. You need an artist whose work you can trust completely, someone with both the artistic credentials and the business acumen to help you navigate this crisis and position the gallery for future success. I gesture toward the paintings on the walls, my paintings still hanging under someone else's name, but not for much longer. You've already demonstrated that you recognize the quality of my work, even if you didn't initially know its true creator. The question is whether you'd be interested in representing the actual artist who created it. Helena's eyes narrow as she considers the implications of what I'm proposing. You're suggesting that you replace Miss Vale as the featured artist for this exhibition? I'm proposing something more comprehensive than that. I produce a second folder, this one containing business documents I've spent weeks preparing with the help of lawyers, accountants, and business consultants who understand gallery operations. A partnership. You bring 3 decades of gallery management experience and an established collector network. I bring artistic production, authentication expertise, and a proven ability to identify fraud before it damages your reputation. The proposal is audacious, but it's also logical. Helena needs to distance herself from tonight's scandal while demonstrating that she can turn crisis into opportunity. Partnering with the actual artist whose work she's been unknowingly promoting accomplishes both goals while positioning her as someone who stands by authentic artistic vision when it's revealed. You want to buy into the gallery? Helena asks, her business instincts clearly engaged despite the chaos of the evening. I want to help you expand it, I clarify, opening the folder to reveal financial projections, market analysis, and strategic planning documents. My family background is in business development and strategic planning. I have access to capital, connections in adjacent markets, and ideas for how galleries can better serve both artists and collectors in an evolving economy. I hand her a summary document that outlines my proposal in clear, business-focused language. Authentication and provenance verification are becoming increasingly important as the art market grows and fraud becomes more sophisticated. Tonight's revelation demonstrates that even the most reputable galleries need better systems for verifying artistic credentials. Helena studies the document while the crowd around us watches with fascination. Whatever decision she makes tonight will be scrutinized, analyzed, and remembered by everyone who matters in the regional art world. What you're proposing, she says slowly, is that we turn tonight's crisis into a competitive advantage by positioning ourselves as leaders in authentication and fraud prevention. Exactly. And by demonstrating that when fraud is discovered, we act decisively to correct it while protecting the interests of both artists and collectors. Helena looks around the room, noting the eager attention of critics, collectors, and other gallery owners who are witnessing this negotiation in real time. She's calculating not just the business implications of my proposal, but the social and professional ramifications of how she handles this moment. This is definitely a conversation we should have privately, she says finally. But I'm very interested in exploring the possibilities you've outlined. The crowd around us begins to stir as people realize the evening's main drama has concluded and normal social interactions can resume. Cassandra and Noah have already departed, probably to begin damage control efforts that will prove futile given the scope of tonight's revelations and the thoroughness of the evidence presented. But their departures create space for different conversations to begin. Dr. Crawford approaches with a satisfied expression that reflects both professional pride and personal affection. Elegantly handled, Sophie. You've managed to expose the fraud while offering Helena a path forward that protects her reputation. Very strategic thinking. And very profitable, Patricia adds with professional appreciation. The partnership you're proposing positions you to benefit financially from work that was stolen from you, while helping Helena recover from a situation that wasn't her fault. Everyone wins except the people who tried to steal from you. Everyone who deserves to win. I agree. The people who tried to steal from me made their own choices about ethics and consequences. Marcus Thornfield appears at my elbow, notebook already open and pen poised. Miss Chen, I'd like to schedule that interview we discussed earlier. This story is going to be front page in next week's arts section, and I want to make sure I capture all the nuances of what happened here tonight. Of course, I reply, though you might want to wait a few days for the follow-up story. I suspect there will be additional developments worth covering. Over the next hour, I have variations of the same conversation with a dozen different people. Critics interested in the broader implications for authentication practices, collectors concerned about protecting their own acquisitions, other artists who want to understand how I documented my work so thoroughly, and what lessons they should draw for protecting their own creative output. Each conversation reinforces the same narrative. I'm not just a victim seeking justice, but a sophisticated professional who turned victimization into opportunity. by the time the evening ends, my reputation in the local art world has shifted from promising emerging artist to someone you definitely want to stay on the good side of. Helena and I agree to meet the following afternoon to discuss partnership details in depth. As the last guests depart and the catering staff begins cleaning up, we stand together looking at my paintings, still hanging under Cassandra's name, but not for much longer. I have to ask, Helena says quietly, her voice carrying a note of professional curiosity mixed with personal respect. How long have you been planning this? The documentation you provided tonight is extraordinarily comprehensive. I've been photographing my artistic process for years, I reply truthfully. But I only started thinking about tonight specifically 3 months ago, when I realized what Cassandra had done. And the business partnership proposal? The detailed financial projections and market analysis you provided? I smile, feeling the satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly. I've been thinking about that for much longer. I grew up in a family business, Helena. I understand how to build sustainable growth, how to manage risk, and how to turn crisis into competitive advantage. Tonight just provided the right opportunity to propose something I'd been considering for years. Helena nods slowly, her expression thoughtful. You realize this partnership would give you significant influence over one of the region's most established galleries? I realize it would give us both the opportunity to build something larger and more sustainable than either of us could create alone, I correct. Your expertise in artist development and collector relations, combined with my artistic production and business background, could create a very powerful combination. Assuming we can rebuild trust with our collector base after tonight's revelations, I think tonight actually enhances trust, I replied, gesturing toward the space where we've just demonstrated our commitment to authenticity and professional standards. You've shown that when fraud is discovered, you act decisively to correct it. You've demonstrated that you're willing to partner with artists who can provide authentic provenance and professional-grade documentation. That's exactly what serious collectors want to see from galleries they trust with significant purchases. Helena considers this, her expression shifting from concern to something approaching optimism. You may be right. Marcus Thornfield's article is going to frame this as a story about authentication and due diligence rather than gallery incompetence. Exactly. And our partnership announcement will position both of us as leaders in establishing higher standards for artistic authentication throughout the industry. We shake hands in front of my largest painting, the one that started this entire journey when I saw it displayed under someone else's name 3 months ago. Tomorrow, new nameplates will be installed with the correct attribution. New documentation will be prepared for collectors and insurance companies. New business cards will be printed reflecting our partnership. But tonight, I simply stand in the gallery I'm about to co-own, surrounded by work I created with my own hands, finally credited to its actual creator. The next morning brings a flurry of phone calls, emails, and text messages as word of last night's revelations spreads through professional networks that extend far beyond the local art scene. Marcus Thornfield's preliminary article, posted online shortly after midnight, has already been shared hundreds of times across social media platforms and forwarded through industry mailing lists. The headline reads, "Local Artist Exposes Systematic Art Fraud, Demonstrates New Standards for Provenance Documentation." The article frames me as both victim and hero, emphasizing my professional approach to documenting theft and my constructive response to gallery victimization. More importantly for Helena's reputation, it positions her as a responsible gallery owner who acted decisively when presented with evidence of fraud, rather than someone who failed to properly vet her artists. My phone rings as I'm reviewing partnership documents over morning coffee in my apartment. Helena's voice carries a note of excitement that wasn't present the night before. "Sophie, you need to see this morning's response to Marcus's article. I've had 6 calls from collectors asking about your other work. 3 from artists wanting to discuss representation, and 2 from other gallery owners proposing collaboration opportunities." Crisis converted to competitive advantage, I observe with satisfaction. Exactly. And there's something else you'll find interesting. The insurance company that covers the gallery called this morning. They want to hire you as a consultant to help them develop fraud prevention protocols for their other clients. Apparently, your approach to documentation and authentication could help them reduce fraud-related claims across their entire client base. This is an unexpected bonus that could prove even more valuable than the gallery partnership. Insurance consulting work would provide additional income while establishing my credentials in an adjacent professional field. More importantly, it would create relationships with other galleries, auction houses, and private collectors throughout the region and potentially beyond. When do they want to meet? This afternoon, if you're available. They want to understand your documentation methods in detail and discuss developing industry-wide standards for provenance verification. After we hang up, I spend some time reviewing the social media response to last night's events. The art world thrives on drama, and the combination of theft, fraud, scientific evidence, and professional revenge has generated exactly the kind of buzz that can launch careers and reshape reputations. More interesting are the private messages I'm receiving from other artists, several of whom are sharing stories about suspicious behavior from people in their professional networks. Last night's revelation has apparently encouraged others to examine their own situations more carefully and consider whether they might be vulnerable to similar theft. One message particularly catches my attention. It's from Maya Rodriguez, a sculptor whose work I've admired for years. Sophie, I saw Marcus's article this morning and watched some of the video that people posted from last night. I think I may have a similar situation with someone who's been photographing my work in progress and asking very detailed questions about my techniques and materials. Could we meet sometime this week? I'd love to learn about your documentation methods and maybe get some advice about how to protect myself. I respond immediately, suggesting coffee later in the week. If there are other artists being victimized by systematic fraud, helping them protect themselves serves both altruistic and strategic purposes. Building a network of artists who trust my expertise and judgment creates opportunities for collaboration, referrals, and mutual support that could prove valuable for years to come. By noon, I've received similar messages from 4 other artists, 2 gallery interns who want advice about red flags to watch for in artist submissions, and 1 art student who's wondering if her roommate's sudden improvement in painting technique might be explained by something other than natural talent development. The afternoon meeting with Helena and the insurance representatives exceeds my most optimistic expectations. They're not just interested in my documentation methods. They want to develop a comprehensive authentication protocol that could be implemented across their entire client network. The financial impact of art fraud has been increasing dramatically over the past decade, explains Robert Chen, the lead investigator for Meridian Arts Insurance. Galleries are becoming more sophisticated about vetting work, but thieves are becoming more sophisticated about creating convincing provenance documentation. So what you've developed, adds his colleague Sarah Kim, is a real-time authentication system that would be nearly impossible to fake convincingly. The combination of time-stamped photography, cloud storage with integrity verification, and scientific analysis creates multiple layers of evidence that would satisfy any legal challenge. Helena leans forward in her chair, her business instincts clearly engaged. Are you suggesting Sophie could develop this into a broader consulting practice that serves other galleries and collectors? We're suggesting she could develop it into an industry standard, Robert replies. If we could get major galleries, auction houses, and private collectors to adopt similar documentation requirements, it would dramatically reduce fraud across the entire art market. The conversation continues for another hour, covering technical specifications, implementation timelines, and compensation structures that would make this consulting work extremely lucrative. By the time we finish, I've agreed to develop a pilot program for 20 galleries in the region, with the possibility of expanding nationally if the results prove successful. Walking back to my car, I reflect on how dramatically my situation has changed in less than 24 hours. Yesterday morning, I was an emerging artist whose work had been stolen by someone she trusted. Tonight, I'm a gallery co-owner, insurance consultant, and potential industry expert on authentication protocols. The transformation feels almost surreal, except that every step was planned, documented, and executed with careful precision. That evening, I meet Dr. Crawford for dinner at a small restaurant near the university campus. She's been following the day's developments with the proud satisfaction of a mentor watching a former student succeed beyond all reasonable expectations. You've managed something quite remarkable, she observes over wine that tastes like victory. Not just recovering your stolen work, but positioning yourself as a leader in an emerging field that didn't really exist 24 hours ago. I had excellent teachers, I reply, raising my glass in a toast to mentorship and strategic thinking. The insurance consulting work is particularly clever, she continues. It creates legitimacy and credibility that extends far beyond your artistic practice. And it provides access to galleries, collectors, and auction houses throughout the region. I add, market intelligence is valuable in any business. Dr. Crawford smiles with genuine warmth. You sound more like a business strategist than an artist. I'm both. That's what makes this approach sustainable. Over the next week, the partnership with Helena is formalized through legal documents that give me significant operational authority while protecting both our interests. The insurance consulting contract is signed with terms that exceed my artistic income by a factor of 3. The authentication protocol pilot program begins implementation with an initial cohort of galleries that includes some of the most prestigious names in the region. More importantly, the social dynamics of the local art world continue shifting in my favor in ways that create opportunities I couldn't have imagined a month ago. Cassandra has apparently left town, though rumors suggest she's trying to rebuild her reputation in a different city where last week's revelations haven't penetrated the local art scene. Noah's attempt to flip the artworks he purchased has been complicated by their now questionable provenance, leaving him with $47,000 in potentially worthless inventory and legal questions about his role in what prosecutors might consider fraud conspiracy. Meanwhile, my phone rings constantly with new opportunities. Exhibition invitations from museums rather than just galleries, consulting requests from collectors building major acquisitions, collaboration proposals from other artists who want to work with someone they can trust completely. The irony isn't lost on me. Cassandra's theft was supposed to launch her career by appropriating my work and reputation. Instead, it launched my career by demonstrating my professionalism, strategic thinking, and ability to turn crisis into opportunity on a scale that dwarfs anything she could have achieved through theft. 6 months later, the Whitmore Contemporary Gallery has been officially renamed the Whitmore Chen Gallery, and our annual revenue has more than doubled through a combination of higher value sales and consulting income. The insurance consulting practice has expanded to serve clients in 12 states, and my artistic work is being exhibited in museums rather than just commercial galleries. But the real victory isn't financial or professional. It's the knowledge that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt on stronger foundations. That creativity applied to problem solving is just as valuable as creativity applied to painting, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply being successful enough that your betrayers become irrelevant to your ongoing story. I still think about Cassandra sometimes, usually when I'm working in my new studio, larger, better equipped, and thoroughly documented by security cameras that upload to servers I control completely. I wonder if she learned anything from the experience, if she ever developed her own artistic voice, if she understands the difference between inspiration and theft. But mostly I focus on the work ahead. There are paintings to create, galleries to operate, authentication protocols to refine, and industry standards to establish. There are other artists to protect, fraud cases to solve, and opportunities to create that didn't exist before I demonstrated what's possible when artistic vision combines with strategic thinking. This time, I kept the documentation. This time, I built the network. This time, I didn't just recover what was stolen. I used the theft to create something larger and more valuable than what I originally lost. The gallery is mine now. The reputation is mine. The relationships, the expertise, the professional authority. All of it earned through careful planning and strategic execution rather than theft and betrayal. Cassandra claimed my painting. After Rebirth, I unveiled the Provenance and took everything else.